Hi, welcome to the week 5 lecture. This week I want to talk about evolutionary leadership. Um, we have a week 5 discussion question that focuses on transformational, authentic, ethical, transactional, and shared leadership. I know most of you are familiar with Landy and Conti's text. I think it was in chapter 12 they identified LMX, transformational leadership, authentic and charismatic leadership as new approaches. And so really neither one mentioned evolutionary leadership, and there is research being conducted in this area. So I want to add it to the mix. A key researcher in evolutionary leadership is Van Voot, and he presented at University of Michigan a few years ago, and I don't live too far from there, so I had a chance to go and hear his presentation and meet him. And so he said that humans have evolved to live in groups, and that humans also crave and seek a sense of belonging, and they fulfill that through families or collectives, and these collectives are of different sizes. I mean, obviously it started out with tribes, and then from tribes went to communities. Gangs and cults even are a type of collective. Religious groups are as well. And in these collectives, there's a need for leaders to provide direction, so that the need for leadership evolved. And the leaders are selected based on physiological and psychological traits and characteristics, and I'll get more into that here later. Van Voot continued by defining leadership as a process of influence to attain mutual goals. And the study of leadership needs to include or focus on the needs and interests of followers and the collective. In other words, if they don't, then the collective or the followers really have no use or no need for the leaders. So that it has to be a mutual benefit there. Van Voot examined leaders from a strategy of social influence that has evolved as culture and social situations have evolved. Right, there's primarily two evolutionary theories of leadership. One is dominance and submission, where a hierarchy of dominance develops over competition for scarce resources, and we see that this is probably the dictator model, which there's a lot that could be said on that, but I'm not going to go into that right now. And then there's social coordination theory, where leadership exists to coordinate and solve social problems. I think this is the more relevant one here. All right, in dominance and submission, the hierarchies tend to be flatter than animal hierarchies, and they're often based upon prestige rather than dominance. And in general, people tend not to like being led through dominance. So we move into social coordination theory. The prisoner's dilemma model is used as a leader follower decision-making model. And leaders and followers cooperate when both gain from the exchange. If one of the two does not benefit, then the leader-follower relationship breaks down. The leader-follower relationships develop in response to threats and opportunities, and where working together results in a benefit to both the leader and the followers. And I think that makes sense. Some other variables that are involved here, certainly age, health, and gender are evolutionary correlates. For example, leadership requiring strength and stamina favors young leaders, such as military and sports. An example, Warren Bennis, World War II, was a young combat leader in the military, and I think he was very young, he was around age 20, 21. And sports, I think that NFL has some of the youngest head coaches in all of professional sports. So um, leadership requiring knowledge and experience favors older leaders, and politics or politicians today are a good example. They tend to be older. Um, Health is a factor, and where the health of leaders is consistently better than that of the followers. I mean, we see in politics, leaders who tend to be older want to talk about how good their health is as a factor because they know there's an evolutionary benefit to that. Females have an advantage in verbal memory and communication in today's information society, and so we're seeing an increase in females in leadership. So in a way, we might say the environment selects for female leadership today, and we're starting to see a trend in that. A good example of this is all the females running for a political office today. Some lessons for modern leaders that came out of Van Voot and Ahua's book. Don't overrate the romance of leadership. Find a niche and develop your prestige. Keep it small and natural. Favor followers. That's a good tip. Practice distributed leadership. Mind the pay gap. Look for leaders from within. Watch out for nepotism. Avoid the dark side. Narcissism is an example. Don't judge a leader by his or her cover, as primates tend to do. So that's pretty interesting. Evolutionary drives affecting leaders, and this comes from a book called Driven by Lawrence and Naria. I had a chance to meet Paul Lawrence as well. Paul Lawrence, I think he died in 2011 at age 89, but I met him in the early 90s and spent several hours with him in a small workshop that he led, where he was talking about organizational structures and how they evolved. It was an evolutionary perspective on structure. But anyway, in his book Driven, there are 4 fundamental evolutionary drives that are foundational to behavior. It's the drive to acquire, the drive to bond, the drive to learn, and the drive to defend. And he went on to say that leaders who provide the fulfillment of these basic drives to their followers and organizations establish more balanced and sustainable organizations. So this would be provide insight to a leader on how to be successful as a leader within the organization. Let me see, I've got one more here. There we go. Bruce Gibb, he was a friend of mine, did the review on Naturally Selected. That's by Van Voot. And of course, there's the reference to the Landy Conti text, the Lawrence text Driven, very interesting. It was published in 2002. And then two sources for Van Voot, his book Naturally Selected, The Evolutionary Science of Leadership, and an interesting article that's in the library, Evolutionary Origins of Leadership and Followership. Thank you.